Oak's gonna go.
Take our picture.
Another one?
Johnston, crew member on a Type 1 interagency hotshot crew, Bear Divide Hotshots in Santa Clarita, California, on the Angeles National Forest. As a crew member on a hotshot crew, one of 20 specialized individuals that go to places others can't to fight fire. We can go direct, where we're moving fuels away directly from the creeping or smoldering fire. That would be when fire activity is at its lowest. We'll hike into its direct fire line and pull fuel away and dig hand line, and go indirect, where we'll go miles in front of the fire and try and remove fuels in a certain diameter wide and a certain girth wise. And then when that fire comes, hopefully it will hit that and stop, and we strategically place that on ridges or flatland, places where we have an advantage and the fuels are easier to deal with than, say, direct. And we can also do a backfiring, like we previously stated, and that removes fuels from the head of the fire, and in that way, when the two hit each other, there's nothing left to burn.
Well, they don't want it running this way. They don't want the heel coming out, I'm sure, but that was a terrible shot. Holy shit, dog.
The well-being for the public, you never want to see the public hurt, or that's your job, is to save their house, but sometimes you do everything you can and you want to do more, and that's what drives you forward. And probably the camaraderie with the guys, you know, there's only 20 of us on a hotshot crew and we can only do so much, but you have to pick the next person up when they're down, and they'll do the same for you and keeps you going. You have to be able to work for 16 hours a day, you know, that's a long time of just straight working. The physical fitness is high. We put a lot of priority on that. Hikes, runs, the average, 6 to 7 miles, 3-4 mile hikes. It's more of a endurance than sprint, because we have to be able to go for those amount of hours, those many days. You know, your body's run down, you get fatigued. Mentally have to be strong. You have to train your brain as much as you train your body. You have to be in good enough shape to not drink 2 gallons of water in a day. You have to be able to work on low food intake, low water. Shifts are hard. You know, it's 100 degrees in the city. It's 120 where we are. You can train your mind to look for the differences in the normal. You know, you see that one tree that's dead opposed to the 10 that are alive. You pay attention to the one that's dead. You know, that's the one that can come down. We rely a lot on weather, so, you know, always looking up at the sky as well as as many times as you're looking at the ground. You know, you have to see what's going on. You have to see if the wind is changing. You have to see if there's clouds coming in. That all plays a direct factor on the fire behavior. And, you know, it's as simple as driving down the road and noticing something that the passenger doesn't. You know, you see that one mountain that looks worse than the rest, and I think that it adds into the general appeal of life. You know, you want to see things that people don't. It's bad, man. You know, the trees are dying but still standing. You know, there's no water for the fuels to absorb. It comes down to the simple fact that these bushes that have no fire history way out in the middle of nowhere, and these trees that have never been burned, they're dead for the first time in hundreds of years. And for them to be dead and then finally get fire activity, like, it's not what you want to see on the ground. It's also has a fact to do with the people are moving in farther and farther into the wilderness, and then not only do they kill the natural bushes around them, but they implement things that aren't meant to live in California, certain trees and etc. And so those are going to die quicker than the natural, like naturally planted vegetation. And then that adds a part to it, as well as you have the property there now. And back to the climate, the bark beetles are a big problem for us. They're getting into the trees with no winter, where they're not killing off the bugs. You know, normally a normal frost will kill these bugs, whereas we're not getting the snow, we're not getting the cold temperatures to kill the bugs. They stay in the trees, they keep moving. You'll have football field wide of just dead trees ready to go. It's like a matchbox. This year in August, early August, I believe, in San Bernardino, we did a 42-hour shift. That was mission critical. Houses were on the line. Just stay awake for 42 hours and see where your mind takes you. Big problem when California gets a good grass crop and you see the grasses on the hillsides. That's the main carrier for fire. That carries it into the brush, which carries it into the trees and so forth. And the farther away from civilization you get, the thicker the brush, the bigger the trees, and it just carries from there. Most of them happen in California to start from the public, whether arson or vehicle fire or someone dragging chains on the highway. But it can come back to a natural state where lightning, will hit a tree, and then that tree falls down, spreads to the others. Yeah, situational awareness is always there. You got to keep your head on a swivel and you got to look around. As far as the job being dangerous, we don't look at it that way, because you don't want to think what you're doing is dangerous by any means in any walk of life. But there are dangers out there, definitely. The big one for us right now is standing trees. Those things don't make a noise when they come down, and a couple tons of wood will crush you. Another one that's constantly there is the weather. You never know when the weather's going to shift, and you get on a big enough fire that's putting off enough heat, it starts to create its own weather.
Don't lose your lunch, Jerry.
And along with that comes wind shifts, and with the wind shift comes a different part of the fire getting excited and making runs, whereas the head was here and now it's over here. You always, most of the time they're coming in to evacuate you ahead of time and give you enough time to get your memories, get your belongings. But there's always going to be someone that thinks they can protect what is theirs, and that's understandable. And as a firefighter, you don't have the political and legal reasoning to tell them to leave. You can give them your best advice, but you cannot force them. That's law enforcement's job. And and nowadays a lot of people would rather listen to a firefighter than law enforcement. So sometimes when we go in and tell them to leave, that's better than a sheriff or a police officer storming to their door.
And they said, man, you got like 2 minutes to get out of here right now. And so I beat feet, got in the truck, grabbed the dogs, grabbed her.
Yeah, there's been a few that just in general don't like the federal government, and that's who like United States Forest Service, federal government entity. And people don't like the federal government. They don't want to listen to you. They think you're trying to do them wrong, and it goes from there. And you have to handle the situation differently. And again, situation awareness. You can read people. You can tell how they're going to treat you, how you need to treat them. And that's what it comes down to. Working 70 to 80 days on a fire in the summer, and upwards of 100 sometimes. You have to have a strong family. You have to have a family that understands you're doing what you want. You know, if you have significant others, they have to be understanding and work with you and see that you're trying to reach your goal in life. And you know, it helps. Definitely having a mother that, you know, knows, married to a firefighter, a family that was raised by a firefighter, that helps. But and then with work, you create a whole nother family. You know, you're with these guys for so many days. You know everything about them. You know their kids, their wife's name. You know, and that they know yours, and that means something. You know, not someone you just work with, but someone you know. Anyone can fight fire in a box. You know, a house is just a big box. It's eventually going to die out, protect the other structures, but you can't necessarily stop a fire in the mountains. You know, it gets out of control. Next thing you know, it's a couple 100 miles away, 10 miles away, and it's running, and you have no control over it. I mean, it's different strategies. You know, I get to go places that no one gets to go. I get to see things not many people get to see, and realistically, it's just a massive science experiment to see what this feature created by Mother Nature can do to these hills. You know, you have to strategically get in there and cut it off, and it's a long battle, but eventually we will win. A lot of fires in Southern California due to the fact that people are moving in farther up the mountains. They want the hillside view. They want to see down on people. That's creating now a man-made hazard, which we have to protect. You know, most of the time we're out there saving bushes and trees, but you're damn right we're gonna go save your house if that's the priority. You know, in general, it's taught me to be a man. I carry a lot of pride with my work, as we all do. The integrity, definitely being able to do something when someone's not necessarily watching you, or you know, you got to do the right thing at all times, because it not only is the best for you, but it's the best for your crew. You can't screw them over by doing something better for yourself. Yeah, the inmates play a huge role in firefighting. Just as the same as the hotshot crew, they're a 20, 30 man crew that go out there with chainsaws and axes and shovels and physically put fire line in. You know, they work harder than a lot of hotshot crews, in all honesty. You know, whatever supplies the crew would need. If you work with the chainsaw, you're gonna carry a saw kit to repair the chainsaw. Anything all the way down to the smallest nut and bolt, you're gonna carry it. Usually carry some type of warm gear, a nice long sleeve. You know, you're sweating all day. If you have to sleep out there, you don't want to sleep in a cold t-shirt. Usually 2 gallons of water. Some people carry more, some people carry less. Some type of snack food. You know, you get a lunch usually, but Chef Boyardee cans, you know, tuna, things that can easily be eaten and carried. The mental struggle, definitely farther into an assignment, you know, everyone wants to go home. Everyone gets homesick no matter where you are. You got to push through. You know, there's always an end. You just got to keep pushing. Sometimes the work is hard, but no matter what, at the end of the day, you're gonna laugh and smile with your friends. You know, you accomplished it. There's always gonna be an end.